Morning, everyone. And as usual, normal, we'll start with the short breathing meditation to quiet our mind, to bring our mind in moment, in present. And after that, followed by cultivating good intention, motivation for being here. And then, rest. So again, make yourself relax, comfortable, and just try to breathe normally. And keep your attentions to the breath and observe and watch mindfully. When you are breathing in, being aware you are breathing in. When you are breathing out, being you are breathing out. Just simple. So your mind started to calm and quiet. Then we can try to reflect, contemplate, and feel, There's nothing more better than to be able to cultivate, good heartedness, warm heartedness, of loving kindness, compassion, and awakened mind in our life. Even though we might not be able to change the world immediately with our actions, even though we might not be able to free the pain and suffering of everyone in the world directly, now, but still, if we can have good heart of loving kindness, compassion, and try to send those good feelings every day, that will be wonderful. If we don't need to get ill will feeling, negative feelings towards anyone every day, it will be wonderful. Therefore, it's worthwhile and important to try all our best in our everyday life to cultivate that good heartness of loving kindness, compassion, and awakening mind. And trying to keep it alive, even in difficult times. And trying to increase and improve it as much as possible. And to be able to do that, is not enough just to wish to be able to do that, but we need to put effort in our practice on everyday level as much as possible. And to practice, we have to be constantly reminded. Even we have the wish to practice and to be a better person with good heart. But when there is no one to remind us, we tend to forget. And for that very reason, that I'm going to listen to the teachings, so I might be reminded, maybe even inspired, maybe even encouraged to do that every day throughout my life, maybe at least for this month, maybe at least this 1 week, at least today. And may our coming here together create cause and conditions for more peaceful environments, more harmony, compassionate environment, externally, internally. And may it become cause and condition to attain our own highest potential, so that we can be most benefit to each and every sentient beings spontaneously, effortlessly, and joyfully. Okay.
Page 73, we'll do the first one.
Thou canst enter destroy the one gone beyond, the four destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sukata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings, retain, teachers of God as human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subdue from the Shakya cliff. I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge.
Page 75. Down, second paragraph.
To the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms, in all aspects, with their supreme faith I pay home. Do not commit any non-virtuous action. Perform only perfect virtuous action. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of Buddha. The star, a visual apprehension, a flame of lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. To this merit may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the fourfold, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the way of aging, sickness, and death.
Page 98, the short mandala offering. And some prayer books, it may be on the bottom of 97.
Begi Joshi Meto Sam Rera Leche Yete Kembandi Sangye Shinto Mide Owai Dokun Namdashina Chöpasho Idam Guru Rana Mandalaka Yatayami.
Refuge in Bodhicitta, once in English by Tibetan. I go for
Refuge until I am enlightened. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By their merit, I create to listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentients. Sangye Chodan Soge Chonam La Chanchu Padu Dane Japsu Dagi Cheshe Gibe Sonam Ge Yola Penche Sangye Dubar Sangye Chodan Soge Chonam La Chanchu Padu Dane Japsu Dagi Cheshe Gibe Sonam Ge Dola Kenche Sanke Duba Kanje Duje Jin Sone, Dawa Tunje Bambeje, Tambe Chuni Tenje Be, Godam De La Chapsa. So, we have been going through and studying the 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas. And again, the core essence and the very heart of all the Buddha's teaching and practice is to cultivate, the good heartedness, warm heartedness of loving kindness, compassion, and the bodhicitta mind, and out of that, loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind, being as much as benefit to others as much as possible. And there are benefit and help that we can provide. Some of those help immediately, some of those help benefit we might not be able to provide anything at the moment. Sudden things that as much as we want to help to relieve their pain and suffering, when the all condition doesn't come, there is hardly much we can do, except then feel their pain, suffering, and cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and wishing them to be free from that pain, sufferings, and keeping in our practice, our prayers, and doing some other practice, Tonglen practices and other formal practices. But in actions, sometimes just as you want to help them, there's very little we can do in certain situations, certain cases. As I mentioned in I think few weeks, sometimes the person who need the help, even you have the ability to help, but they have to be ready to receive the help. If they are not ready, then just things have to come together. And in some cases, as a ordinary human beings at the moment, we are limited as much as we would like to make sure there is no one who is suffering from hunger, thirsty, sickness, no one who suffers from mental disease or mental sickness and all of that as much as we want, but it's not possible to us individually to make that happen immediately. But as long as we continue to, even though on action level, even though there's very limitations how much we can do at this point, and all of that due to many circumstances, conditions, how much we are able to help. But we can always walk with our heart, with our mind. No matter what, we can always walk with our mind. And that is the most important, whether I'm able to help someone physically or not, that is one thing. Sometimes I might be able to help. Sometimes I might not be able to help. Sometimes even I wish to help, I might not be able to help. But at least I can walk with my mind, and so I think at least, I can walk with my mind that I don't have any bad feeling, negative feelings towards others. If we don't have any bad feeling, negative towards anyone, that is wonderful. And we're not talking, even not even from Dharma point of view, even in ordinary point of view, even worldly point of view, I think it's great that if you don't have to have any bad feeling, negative feeling, ill will feeling towards anyone. And not only on top of that, then we can cultivate good feelings. Loving kindness, compassion is wonderful. And on top of that, if we can actually act to reduce the pain and relieve the pain, and that is even greater. And so, and so the Bodhisattva practices is, the practice that described here is a lot of, as we have went through the verses at the very beginning, explaining about creating the right conducive, external, internal conducive condition to cultivate that loving kindness, compassion, the bodhi, the mind. And then he explained about how to cultivate that loving kindness, compassion, bodhi, the mind. And once you have cultivated loving kindness, compassion, bodhi, the mind, how can we sustain that, maintain that without deteriorating? Because sometimes even we have good heart at the very beginning, then we encounter obstacles. We encounter people who are so, maybe not so nice. Even when you're trying to be nice to them, maybe they are not being so nice. And not only not being nice, in some cases they can become quite mean and cruel. And when those things happen, then it is our whatever good heart we had before might deteriorate, and then we started to feel bad about that person, and negative about that person. And then maybe that might lead us to have ill will feelings towards that person. And so our good heart that we had started to deteriorate. So until we have reached certain point that it doesn't deteriorate at all, and it is absolutely possible through practice, we can reach a point. Then once you reach that point, there is no coming back. But for many of us who are still at the very beginning, who are still not reached that point, even when you have developed some good heart, still that can deteriorate if we don't really take care of it. By continually, it's like, a tree, you are trying to plant a tree. When it's very small, even it has grown, you have to take care very well that the animals does not eat it, that the bugs doesn't get it, or all of that. And once it's grown up, then you don't have to pay much attention. It is able to take care of, so when it's very beginning, when it's very more kind of, is more vulnerable. And same thing in practice, and that is, and so therefore, even we have developed loving kindness, compassion, both to the mind, still we need to practice and work hard that it does not deteriorate by certain people's behavior, actions, or not necessarily people, maybe other sentient beings, and not even necessarily sentient beings. Sometimes different difficult events, situations that due to whatever, natural or maybe non-natural that happens, and then we become very kind of, that could lead us to become very kind of depressed and low. And with that kind of low mind and depression, then we started to become more negative about everything. And then becoming more negative about everything, then we started to think, what is the point of having compassion, love, and care? What is the point of trying to be helpful? And all of those negative thoughts can arise. Through all of that, again, it can damage, deteriorate our loving kindness, compassion, that. And so that is, so in a way that where we have reached at the moment, the verses where it speak about transforming the difficult situations into the path, is one way of that, so that the Bodhisattva mind, due to those difficult situations, that our Bodhisattva mind does not get deteriorated, and that we don't lose that Bodhisattva mind, that we don't lose that good heartedness again. And as we have already mentioned before, such loving kindness, compassion, the good heartedness of that, and bodhicitta, is the source of your own happiness, source of others' happiness, is source of your own peace, source of peace for others. And it's a source of good relationship, any kind of relationship, if we have that, any kind of relationship will be better, more stable. And of course, it becomes cause, no doubt about those practice leading to our to attain or obtain our highest potential fully awakened state. and so that we can be even more benefit and help to each and every sentient beings. So I think we finished the verse number 12 last week, and it's verse number 13. Carry the suffering into the path. Even someone cuts off their heads while they do not have slightest faults is a practice of conqueror children out of compassion to take his negativities upon themselves. First of all, of course, like such teaching like here, you often see similar verses in all of the Lojong's practice. If there is any way that you can escape from being beaten up, from being cut up, from being wounded, injured, you have to do it. It doesn't mean that you just not try to avoid that. Do you get it? It is not saying just lay out there and let people cut your head. Okay? Because sometimes if you don't really understand, it sounds like that. So it's not saying that if someone is trying to, hurt you, if there's any way you can kind of keep away from that being hurt, we have to take every action to do that. Keep distant from where you can get harm, if possible, physically, emotionally, so that we don't receive the harm, that we don't get injured, that we don't experience the pain. But sometimes, despite trying all our best, sometimes it comes into a condition where we are being injured by someone. We have been harmed by someone, being hurt by someone, and so forth, So then the harm is already done. You cannot kind of change that. Of course, in the future, we can try to keep away distant so that we don't receive the harm and or take certain actions that it doesn't repeat it and get harm. But whatever harm that is done is done. The hurt that is done is done. Whatever harm is done cannot be undone. The injury that has been done is done. And, so when such is done, our normal response, our ordinary normal response would be very upset and angry. Very upset and angry. And out of that very upset and angry, then a lot of time we try to, out of that anger, and then we try to respond back in a negative way. So we try to harm them back. So that we try to hurt them back. We try to harm them back. We try to injure them. We try to damage them. That's very normal, ordinary way of responding. In normal world, it seems it's just right, to respond that way. In normal, ordinary world, normal, ordinary way, that kind of response is okay. It seems, in our ordinary, normal world, where people say, oh, you have right to be that. And you have right to respond that way. We feel that and we encourage others to do that. Oh, you have a right to feel that way and you have a right to respond that way. But when we are trying to practice the Bodhisattva way of life and trying to cultivate more loving kindness, compassion, Bodhisattva mind, and when we're trying to sustain that way of responding emotionally, attitude-wise, or verbally, physically, is not healthy and helpful and beneficial. Not beneficial to others, not beneficial for yourself. And when you started to feel, such angry and upset, while we are unable to change the situation, but what does it? It damages our good heart of loving kindness, compassion, the Bodhisattva mind. It damages that. It makes that loving kindness deteriorate from that perspective. And of course, when you are upset and angry, you are creating one extra pain. That person has done you a physical damage, injury. Now you are creating mental damage, mental injuries. So we are adding more suffering, more pain, which you don't want. So we are injuring emotionally, mentally now. And we injure our mind and emotions by what? Not by something physical, by our own mind, something internal, by such anger. And such anger and hatred and, ill will feelings, all of that. And that kind of damage is much more worse from many perspectives, from many point of view. Physical injury, damage, is easy to kind of fix it by some surgery, in many cases, surgery, some other treatments and that. But the emotional, the mental damage is much more difficult because it cannot be fixed by some kind of external treatment and surgery. It's much more difficult to cure. It's much more difficult to heal. It takes, for some people, it takes years. Some people, it takes whole life. Some people, throughout even their whole life, they are unable to heal that. Throughout their whole life, they have not been able to heal that was emotionally injured with due to certain circumstances with someone in the past, and due to that, all this, our own, so much anger, hatred, and all different negative emotion so strongly, and so that is, and so and then from the Dharma point of view, it also destroys a lot of our virtues. It's not easy to create the virtues and positive karma and merit, but then when we have that kind of strong anger and hatred, it destroys all the so much of merit and virtues and positive karma that we have created. So much difficulties can destroy easily, And of course, physically, when we have those strong emotions, people can have more easily can have a heart-related, and there are research, and which shows, stroke and heart-related sickness can arise more easily, and so forth, and of course there is no peace in your mind, no doubt about that. And that being the case, so trying all our best not to allow ourselves to be carried away by such anger and hatred and resentful as much as possible. So that is the here, not giving ourselves to be overwhelmed and carried away by those negative feelings and emotions, because it is such a harmful to us and others in so many different ways. So instead, even though we might not agree with their behavior of injuring someone, whether yourself, your family, friends, or someone else, damaging, injuring, harming someone, even though we do not agree with such actions, but at the same time, understanding people, all sentient beings, engage in such harmful actions when they are overwhelmed by their own defilement, their own delusions. That's how people hurt others, harm each other, when they are overwhelmed by their own negative emotions and defilements. So when we really understand that, as we reflect, contemplate on that, if you really understand they are acting that way because they are totally being overwhelmed by their own defilement, their own delusions, then maybe, you don't blame everything that person's. As Shantideva said, if you needed someone to blame, then blame to that person's defilements, the delusions. Because that is the person's defilement, delusion is like the remote control of that person's. And that defilement, delusions kind of force that person to act in such a way. So then you feel that person helpless. Even though you don't agree with that person's behavior or actions, but at the same time, you feel that person is helpless because that person is totally overwhelmed by the delusions. Then maybe we can feel, while we do not agree with the action, but we can feel compassion on that person. We might feel compassion on that person. And that is what we need to, that is the practice. So instead of being upset and anger by such behavior, instead we try to have more compassion by understanding that. And we do have the capacity and ability to feel that way. Sometimes we feel about that for ourselves, Sometimes you feel that for someone you love very much, your children or your friends or so much, their actions is not good. You don't agree with their action, their behavior and that, but because they have some problems, and when they are in that moment of that, they cannot control themselves. So while you don't agree with them, but you don't have a bad feeling, you feel instead so much compassion for that person and wish that person is free from whatever that is making them to do that, So if we have that capacity to feel for someone, we have ability to feel for everyone in similar actions. And so it's training the mind, it's training the mind. Maybe you might even feel with sometimes your pet, isn't it? Maybe your pet is going and killing some birds or some animals. Probably you don't like that. You don't agree with that. But still you feel compassion for that. You don't get so upset and angry because you know it's just animals. It's just their instinct. It's almost like helpless, unlike like we human beings where we can think and say, oh, this is harmful and this is, you are killing someone's is precious life and all of that. They don't have that same level of understanding that and same kind of cognitive and ability. It's just their instinct. And so therefore you don't feel so upset, so angry about that, but you might feel compassion and you wish the animal does not, your pet does not act that way. And so that all of that, what we see, you know, we have the capacity to feel that way, even when someone is acting in unhealthy way, harmful way, hurtful way. By understanding from that point of view, we have the capacity to feel for our pets, we have capacity to feel for many of the animals that are in the wild. We can feel that for some of our people that in our life, you know, friends, families, and all of that. Sometimes we might feel for ourselves. And so we just have to extend that to all other sentient beings with same understanding. And with our pets and with our friends, it is easy. We don't have to put so much effort to do that. But with others, because we don't have same relationship at the moment or same feeling, we just have to put more effort reminding and practicing that. And of course, because even though I'm spending more time here, but that will be the way that we will have to apply, same to all other verses that come similar, different situation, but similar feelings and experiences due to different, and so and as you know, all the Katamba masters says, so important to differentiate the person and person's actions. So important to differentiate the person and person's actions. While we totally disagree with the person's actions, and maybe we might even have to take certain, in some cases, certain action to stop such harmful action, at the same time, not having any bad feeling for the person, but instead kindness, loving feeling of loving kindness and compassion. That is the key. That is the key to all those teachings. Okay? All these teachings. Because I often hear people misunderstanding, unable to differentiate the person and person's actions. So because the person's actions is harmful, and so that person's action should be kind of not encouraged and stop, you know. But that doesn't mean we have to be angry and upset with the person and have a negative feeling about that person. And so all these teachings, how can we continue to, while not, especially those harmful actions, while we do not agree and try to stop it if there is any way and discourage and all of that, at the same time trying to keep the compassion alive, the loving kindness, the bodhisattva towards even that person. And that is the key, that is the key. And here, you know, so with out of that compassion, by understanding, because that person is totally overwhelmed and overpowered by own defilements. Therefore, the person is the slave of that delusion, defilements. If you really understand that, then definitely we can feel compassion for that. You know, At the moment, I think maybe we don't really understand how that person is a real slave of that delusions. Somehow we feel that person has control, but decided not to control it. Do you get it? When we feel that, then it's hard to feel compassion, you know. That person has totally option, choice, and control. He can go either way to respond that way or this way, but in a lot of cases, it's not always like that. We have our own experiences, everyday experiences. How many times we lose our mind to the very people we love most? And every day we try so hard not to make, not to hurt the people we love so much, who are the most close and dear in our, but how many times unintentionally we hurt them? And we hurt them in the moment when we lose our mind, because one of those delusions too strong in that moment, and we couldn't control it. We were powerless in that moment. And so that's very clear, and that could happen to anyone, anytime, you know. Because when we look from outside for someone outside there, we always feel almost like, oh, they have the choice, and they made this choice. Do you get it? But is that the truth to you, to us, all the time? There are certain times that is true. Sometimes the delusion not so strong, and we do have certain level of clarity of our mind, and certain level of that. But sometimes when the delusion is so strong, so intense, you don't have that ability, and even the space. You just react impulsively without any space, just like that, you know, for most ordinary beings, unless you have certain training. And so therefore, with that, we can see how we are so become powerless and become a slave of those defilements. And if we really understand that, then it gives us certain foundations to feel compassion for that person instead of anger. If we don't see that, then it is hard. If we don't have that foundations, then you cannot force your mind, you know, saying, oh, you have to be compassionate. Oh, you have to be compassionate. You can't get upset. You cannot get angry. Just as we cannot be forced, our mind cannot be forced that way, you know. So the mind to feel compassion, not be upset, it need to have some kind of understanding, some kind of foundations, and that understanding that create the foundation to feel compassion. That person have not total control over their own mind, emotions, and in the moment of that person being overwhelmed by so powerful, and then he or she act in such a way, then we see some foundation for our mind to feel compassion. And if you can feel compassion, you don't suffer. Most thing, you know, that is the key. Someone has already injured you, damaged you, hurt you, harm you. Whether you get upset, whether you get compassion, what has happened is not going to change anything. But afterwards, after that happens, you know, if you are angry and upset, we suffer emotionally now. If we are able to keep compassion and love, then you don't suffer emotionally. You don't suffer emotionally. You don't go through the extra pain that we create by our own mind. Not only that, then maybe because your mind is undisturbed by those anger and so forth, but your mind is more stable, more calm because of feeling of loving kindness and compassion, then it will give you, your mind is better state to make a come out with thoughts how to go about whole situations, how to respond, whether should I respond or not respond, if I should respond, how should I respond, and all of that, you will have a better way to see things better and more healthy way, more positive way, without being so harsh on others and yourself. So, and then maybe we can, and so that is, but when you have in that, and so that those are the, reason why we need to have that and this, we are not even talking about, enlightenment. We are not talking about enlightenment, future life, merits, virtues. And we are not even talking about necessarily trying to be overly nice, kind to others. Let them do whatever they do. Let me hurt me, and that. It's not even that. It's also about our own happiness, our own peace of mind. Immediately. And so, and of course, someone's harsh on me, then I can be harsh on them, and then they become more harsher, and then I become more harsher, and then that is, and that is what Buddha said, and many others says, the only way to subdue someone's anger is only through loving kindness, compassion. Hatred and anger cannot be subdued by anger and hatred. The fire cannot be extinguished by a fire. And so that person is angry and upset, therefore they act that way, and then we respond with anger and upset, and then we are fueling the fire more, and that fire gets more stronger, and that fuel back to us, and our fire gets stronger, and then it burns everyone. The fire from both sides fuel and so strong, then it burns everyone, the others, yourself, and people around ourselves, people around that person, everything. And so then when we have that little bit of, when we have that, able to feel certain level of compassion on that basis, and and from another point of view, from Dharma point of view, another point of view, that person is creating so much negative karma. And the consequences of such actions that they will have the experience in the futures is such. And so when you feel that, again, you can feel compassion for that. Even someone you dislike so much, when you really see they're really suffering and pain, you will feel for them. Someone you dislike very much, if you see in the street in front of you struggling with pain, and that, probably you will feel for that person, Most time we will feel that, because we do have that, fundamentally, that the Buddha nature, loving kindness, compassion in our nature, When you really directly experience and see even someone you dislike very much in front of you suffering, you will feel some compassion for that person. And so therefore, that is when you can really see all the cause and conditions that they have created so much pain and suffering. And then you can kind of see the pain that they're going to experience in the future. And as it becomes, through your practice and meditation, it will become so kind of so real, you know, in you, as though you are really seeing the pain. Of course, it's something that is going to be happen in the futures, but something you can feel what it could happen, and so real that you can feel compassion. And so when you feel that compassion, then you try to do the Tonglen practice, and especially here, the taking. The Tonglen practice of taking and giving, and here you take the taking there. So then through your practice, you know, as you breathe in, so with that out of loving kindness, compassion, your feeling for that person, while you disagree with the person's harmful actions, then when you breathe in, you can think, you know, taking all that person's pain and sufferings, external, physical, internal, emotional, all of that suffering, as well as all the negative karma that they have created, especially the negative karma they have created now with that particular actions, of that, and including not only negative karma, the delusion that make them to create such negative karma, the very delusions, as well as the imprint that led by the delusions. So all of them, you can think and visualize, you know, like something taking some dark energies with a as you breathe in, like it's something like smoke or something else, and then you can visualize destroying your own self-centeredness, selfish attitude, and then transforming into more loving kindness, compassion. And so you try to do that, and especially, you know, also try to think of the suffering that they might be going through at the moment due to that their actions immediately. And again, that we can relate with ourselves. Again, bring our own experience. Sometimes we hurt someone, okay, intentionally, unintentionally. Sometimes unintentionally, sometimes intentionally, because the delusion is so strong. You know, the delusion is so strong. Your anger is so strong that you wanted to hurt that person, and then out of that intention, wanting to hurt, because of that delusion was so strong, intense. So then maybe you might have said some unkind, harsh word, or sometime, you know, maybe physically, even maybe being violent and having all kind of negative thoughts, you know. And so later, when your mind is more calm, then you started to feel so bad about everything, you know, and you struggle. Why did I say that? Why did I think that? Why did I do that? And so much, again, you go to another level of struggles, another level of suffering and pain, feeling of guiltiness, feeling of regret, you know, feeling of embarrassed, feeling of ashamed of your actions, your thoughts, all of that. Other person doesn't see. Other person think, oh, you are so happy, you know, for what you said. You must be so happy that you hurt me and now you are satisfied and so happy. You must be celebrating the other person. But in your mind, you are struggling, going through so much pain for what you did. You are not celebrating. You are not happy about it. You are feeling embarrassed, ashamed, regret, guilt, and maybe even so much bad that you started to dislike yourself, hate yourself. All of those, now you go to analyze all this pain, you know. If that is the case, Also, from our side, it seems that person might be celebrating, feeling very happy, joyful for the damage, the harm they done to me or my family or someone, anyone. But they might be going through so much of pain, just like we go through. And so trying to take those pain, think about those pain of them, that so they don't have to go through that pain and sufferings. And so trying to do that. And so in that way, through that, then we try to transform these difficult situations of someone's harmful, hurtful actions as a source to cultivate more loving kindness, compassion, to develop the loving kindness, compassion, take it more to further level, is one thing, feeling loving kindness, compassion on the cushions, It is another level, feeling loving kindness, compassion when you are in the world engaging and when people are not so nice. And not only not so nice, when they can actually damage us and hurt us, is much more difficult to develop loving kindness, compassion. So training, not only in the cushion, but even in those levels. And if we can train in those difficult situations, then it's like, we could make a huge jump in our practice. It is hard to make huge jump just on the cushion. And sometimes on the cushion, we might feel we are making a big jump, but not necessarily. But what we have meditated on cushion, bringing into the real life situations and events, and especially difficult like such situation, and if we can really apply that in those, then definitely you will make a huge jump in that your practice of loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta. So yeah, we'll have a stop break here. 14, carrying or transforming the slender into the path. Even someone proclaimed throughout the billions universe, telling to everyone's, very blaming about you, maybe it's saying how bad practitioner you are, how bad person you are, or how incapable you are, or how nasty you are, whatever, from spiritual point of view, from worldly point of view, or whether it's related to your physical outlook, whether it's related with your education, your behavior, your actions, your attitude, your views, whatever, when people started to talk bad about you to everywhere, there is blasphemous about them. It is the practice of conqueror children to speak still more of his good quality with the mind of love. And so even they speak of that again, as I mentioned in the first, the ordinary normal, for the ordinary people would be very upset and angry, and out of that angry and upset, we try to respond back, and most time the response is again, we talk bad about them, in order to make yourself look better, so you have to make them look bad. And that is what happens in ordinary response is, so to make that what he or she said is not true, or he or she is lying, or he or she is not reliable person. So then maybe I will talk about, make him as to that person is unreliable. We're talking or how, or this and that, all of that. And I think it's very normal. You see every day in the news here and there, or everyday life, we see that very often. you know, and sometimes even there is a little bit truth, you exaggerate much more, you know, even though the persons have some faults, some defects, some negativities, there is something truth in that, but then you add up, you know, 80%, 100% is more on that, and make it more believable because there is some truth, you know. When there is a little bit truth and you add up, then it becomes more believable. And that is our response, you know. And again, again, it is same circle, back and forth, back and forth, and that is what is have been going, especially in this country, with the leader now is always accusing each other, one and back and forth and back and forth, never ending. You know, nobody is going to end. You know, and so that is a circle, and never ending, tiring. This drama is not going to finish. Someone has to stop from one side, say we are not going to go in same drama again. Otherwise, it keep on going again and again. And so that is our very normal, ordinary way of responding when they feel hurt, angry, upset. And in these cases, due to someone talking bad about you, you know, negative about you. Whether there is a base in that or there's no base at all, whatever. Maybe there's some truth, maybe there's no truth at all, whatever, if they talk, you know. And so, but then when we act that, then again, you know, our loving kindness, compassion deteriorate, as I mentioned, your bodhisattva deteriorate, you know, your mind is disturbed. And it's not healthy. It's not healthy. And we can see, you know, when we observe someone, look outside, you know, even sometimes you feel, you know, someone did injustice for someone, okay, and kind of, so even though it is done something injustice, but when the victim act very aggressive to the perpetrator, then also you don't feel good about that victim. Do you get it? You can understand the injustice been done to them, and they should get justice for that, you know. There should be some way that they should, but when they themselves become so aggressive in order to do that, then also, you know, you started to lose your compassion and understanding for them, you know, a little bit. Same, and that is how when we observe outside, we feel, and same thing, you know, because someone did injustice to me and said all this to us, all these bad things, maybe when there is no truth, or maybe there's some truth, but they overly exaggerated all of that and all of that. But when we respond with anger and hatred and in a negative way, then also we lose the support from others and understand our own point of view. And that also, you know, even from ordinary, we are not even from Dharma point of view, even just ordinary point of view, you know, you lose more than what you can gain. But if we are able to keep our mind undisturbed, not upset, not angry, and even compassion, then you are more likely to receive more support for yourself, for that action, behaviors, support from everywhere. And maybe that person might even change over the time. Their perception, their behavior, sometimes, you know, if they can feel your love and compassion, you know, it is almost impossible not to be melted, their bad negative feeling, when they really feel someone's loving kindness, compassion. You know, sometimes maybe people doesn't feel it, you know, but if I feel someone's love and compassion, whatever bad feeling I might have before started to melt down. And even maybe I might not agree with their thing, but I will feel they care about me. That is why they did, even though I don't agree with the actions, they took it. So I have a positive feeling and feeling of closeness, dearness, and that is the basis for loving kindness and compassion, and not to have any bad feeling. And so that being the case, so then again, the Bodhisattva way of responding, you know, is instead of responding back with anger and hatred and ill will feeling, same way, negative way, unhealthy way, going over them with all the negativities, exaggerating and so on, or even not exaggerating, just pointing all their faults, everything's all defect. Instead, with a loving kindness, by understanding, you know, just like ourselves, that person also only want happiness, nothing more than that. They want happiness, but they struggle with happiness, just as we struggle with happiness. You know? And they struggle with happiness because they are totally overwhelmed by their own karma and the delusions. You know? When you have no control, and when you are unable to free yourself from the karma and the delusions, then, you know, you are being kind of run by the karma and the delusions. Roll over again and again, even you don't want that to happen, until we have certain control over our own delusion, our own mind and karma. And so that is why they are struggling, why they continue to struggle to find the happiness. Even they want happiness, just like ourselves, we struggle and to find true happiness. And so when you feel that, and the reason they do is because of all their own karma and the delusions, and then again, just like previous, I said, while you don't agree with their action, but you might feel compassion for them and loving kindness. And then with that kind of loving kindness, out of that loving kindness, compassions, then you talk. The Bodhisattva's way of responding is, instead of pointing all their fault, trying to point all their good qualities. You know, that person is pointing all my negative qualities, or maybe even some of them exaggerating. And I can do that back, you know, point all their faults, all their defects, all their mistakes, and even exaggerate it. But what is the point? What is the point of doing that? What is the result of such actions? Does that make me better? Does that make me a better person? Does that make me more happier? Not necessarily. You know, you will not be happy. At the moment when you are able to say, you feel a little bit kind of satisfactions, but long term you will regret it. Long term you will feel bad about it. You know, and of course, not to talk about karmic point of view. You know, even just our immediate kind of feelings in relation to it in this life. And so therefore, you know, and if there is nothing positive to gain from saying that, why I do that? if there's nothing positive consequences from that, by acting same negatively, just like that person, what is the point of doing that? Our loving kindness, compassion, Bodhisattva practice, the Bodhisattva practice decline by doing that. We look bad to the others. We don't gain much from that. We only lose. There is only to lose, nothing to gain. So therefore, why do that? Instead, then we try to, out of compassion, we try to point the good qualities, positive qualities of that person. Isn't that wonderful? If we can do that. It's not easy, but when we, but this is more easy than the previous one, when your head has been cut. When your head has been cut, we don't have even time to think that way. And so and that person would have to change over the time. We human beings, because we all have that good basic nature, when someone responds in such a negative way with anger and hatred, and when the other person responds with loving kindness, compassion, and in a positive way, instead someone pointing all your fault, instead you are talking about their positive qualities. Maybe at the very beginning they might be confused, Is there something going on here? Some drama going on here? How can that person be such compassion and kind and say nice thing about me when I say bad thing, and with that maybe it's not right. Maybe there's something going behind, something going. There's a big storm coming, In that there is something building up, there must be some kind of planning, and big storm is coming, That is how we feel. Probably you feel that way. It's hard to believe that. But eventually, that person will see there is no storm coming there. There's nothing really, and it is sincerely and it's true. Then if they feel that, if they understand, feel that, their mind will absolutely change, has to change. That is our human mind. Our human mind is not a rock, okay? That cannot be changed, that cannot be changed by feelings. When someone feels differently, the mind will change. Their heart will change. Absolutely. And so that person will change, their heart will change, their mind will change, their perspective will change, their behavior will change. And at the end, then it is a win for everyone. It helps everyone. It benefits them. Not only you didn't get upset and angry, not only you lose your peace and create no negative karma, all of that, but you create a cause and condition for that person to change. You create a cause and conditions slowly, that person to change and become more positive. On the other hand, if I respond to anger and back same way, then I'm creating more cause and condition to that person to become more harsh, more angry, more negative. They are already kind of in negativities, and then on top of that, now I'm creating more cause condition, contributing for that person to become even worse, to become more harsh, more unkind, more, and so so it hurt and harm both. And we don't have to go and talk exaggerating their good qualities. Everyone has good qualities and bad qualities, especially as ordinary beings. No one is black with full of defect and fault and where they don't have any positive quality. Neither the ordinary beings is not always white with only positive qualities and where they don't have their own fault and defect. Some have more defect than others. Some has more positive qualities than others. Some have certain more positive quality in certain area than others. Some have some more fault in certain area than others. That being the case, we all have our own good quality and we all have our own fault and defect. And so trying to talk about all the positive qualities that you can observe, that you can hear, that you can think, and that. And to be able to see someone's positive qualities, again, your mind has to be calm, stable, and more not partial. If I have anger with someone, my mind is impartial. So it is hard for me to see that person's positive qualities. Even they have positive quality, it's very hard for me to see that because of my partiality mind of anger. On the other hand, if I'm too attached to someone, because of that attachment of that, partiality of that mind, then again, it is hard for me to see the fault of that person. So you need to have more, but when you have loving kindness, when you have that kind of loving kindness, compassion, your mind is more stable, impartial, and with that, you will be able to see everything's more better. And you'll be able to see qualities, positive qualities, and feel that. And so then, so again, even to talk, when someone act that, and even to talk and say about someone's positive quality, first your mind has to be in certain level, isn't it? Because you wouldn't be able to see their good quality. Your mind is disturbed, angry, upset. And again, that is where Dharma, all the teaching, always come back to the mind, always back to the mind, training of the mind. And so then you can do the practice of giving, In the previous verse, out of compassion, then you took all their sufferings and through your practice, taking all their suffering and cause of the suffering, the karma, negative karma, and all the delusions and obscurations. And here, then, out of that loving kindness, then by understanding they want happiness, just like ourselves, but they lack and dislike. They lack the happiness and they struggle with happiness, and then you wish them all the happiness, cause of happiness, and then as you breathe out, you can think and visualize, sending all your wealth, all your virtues, all your body, everything's in the form of transforming in the form of white light, white energies. And the moment it touched that person's, that person receiving all the happiness, cause of happiness, all the realizations, through all this realization, receiving the ultimate happiness of fully enlightenment. And so we can do that kind of practice. And so again, if we do that practice, again, it helps us to, nurture and keep alive our loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind, as well as to increase and improve it. And at least, even we cannot, if we find very hard to find their positive qualities and talk about, if we find very hard to talk about them, at least maybe we don't have to find their defects, At least we don't try to act somewhere by putting all their defects, all their faults all the times, and make things worse, create more problems, So again, even with each of the verses, we can take the practice on many different levels, There's one stable level, and then we can go further than that level and higher level of that. And those are, those we can apply as much as possible for according to our ability, capacity at the moment, but always trying and always trying to improve, always, that is the key, Before maybe, when such thing happened, impulsively, we just started bombarding, with all their faults and negativities and mistakes and all of that. But now maybe we learn not to do that. Maybe we take the time to reflect and contemplate on that before we say anything or respond back anything. Slowly, maybe best will be not to respond. And maybe not only not to respond, maybe in some cases, as our practice, maybe it's best to respond by telling their good qualities, positive qualities, So again, there could be many levels, in terms of our own practice. Of course, those are more more highly developed, more bodhisattvas who can actually really practice that on that level, and we want to reach that level eventually, but just if we cannot do just exactly as it says, it doesn't mean we cannot practice these verses, We apply and try to practice according to our present situation, present capacity, ability, and had the intention to go further than that and eventually to reach there. Because sometimes what happens, oh, I'm not here, and you see your response is totally opposite of this, and then, oh, better not to try it. And that kind of attitude can come, that can be obstacles and hamper in our progress, in our growth, in our practice, not trying to improve a little bit. And a lot of time we don't try to improve it, because when you hear that and, oh, even your head has been cut, you must have compassion. And I'm nowhere there, and so I better to just skip this one, it's not for me. And or you feel hopeless, or all of those things. And so how can we take those practice on a small level and then slowly trying to improve little bit, and that is and then carrying the insult into the path. Even if someone in the middle of gathering of many beings expose the flaws and speak bad words to them, is quite congratulating and respectfully about them and discriminating him as a virtuous spiritual friend. So previous verse is more like kind of talking behind, to others. And here, is talking in front, not only just in front of someone, but in a big gathering. That will be more kind of embarrassing. That is how we feel when, when someone talk bad about you and flaws, your faults, your shortcomings, defect, and so forth. If that person says quietly to you, you might be still not happy, but it wouldn't upset you so badly. And if someone said that too, when you are together with one person, you feel more hurt. And when it's told in all the big group and all the gathering so group, you feel, because you feel more embarrassed or in front of everyone's. You feel insulted. Maybe if someone said to you that same thing, when you are by yourself, maybe you might not feel insulted, maybe. But when someone say in front of all of that, you might feel more insulted. Again, how we feel, what is insult? Is what does it mean insulting? What does it mean humiliating? It's all perceptions. All perceptions. For someone, it's just a joke, funny. And everyone laugh about it. But someone take it so seriously, personally, it becomes humiliating for them, insult to them. And you often see that playing in the world, Sometimes two good friends say all these kind of things among themselves. They don't feel insulting each other. They don't feel humiliating each other. It's just a fun for them to make fun and just, but then that is done to someone else. They might feel extremely insulted, extremely feeling insulted and humiliated. And so anyway, again, what it shows is, everything, like every phenomena, and definite, not only the humiliation, feeling of humiliation, what is the humiliation, what is the insult, all of that and everything, nothing exists absolutely. How everything is relative, how we relate with that, how we take on that, So when that then again, instead of being upset and angry and then responding with that upset and angry, then again, feeling very grateful that persons point out all my faults, all my defect, understanding that person, by doing that person crushed my ego. And my whole practice is to crush the ego, saying, why am I practicing? Why am I engaged in both path and Mahayana path? Is to crush my ego. That was the whole purpose of my practice. The reason why I wanted to learn, the reason why I wanted to practice is so that I can crush my egos, because that is the source of all problems. And so now this person is doing the job that I was supposed to do. And now that person is helping me to crush my ego's mind. And therefore that person is the true teacher. The teacher is the one who helps us to crush our egoistic mind, to help us to crush all those defilements, all the delusions. And this person is doing that. And so when you feel that, when you really feel that my true purpose of my spiritual practice is to crush ego, my egoistic mind, and this person really did that, and then therefore you are grateful, thankful, and then you will feel respect for that person, appreciation that person's, and that person's actions. Then it doesn't disturb your mind, because you appreciate the person's actions as a helpful, beneficial. How did it is beneficial and helpful? Is it helpful and beneficial in crushing my egoistic mind? and that is what that person did help. And so with that kind of thing, then we try to regard that person as a guru, as a true virtuous spiritual friend who is helping in our spiritual path to reduce and crush our selfish egoistic mind. So through that, then we transform again that situation, which in ordinary normal situation that will make you upset and angry and respond in a negative way, unhealthy way. But here we have transformed it something as a positive, to have a better understanding of situation from different angles, by seeing it as a helpful in the point of from the point of view of our spiritual practice in terms of reducing and crushing our egoistic mind. Once you feel that, then sense of appreciation and respect, and that will naturally come, and high regard. And then you are not, and when you are able to do that, your mind is not disturbed by that person and person's such behavior and such actions, such speech. Then you don't need to suffer. Then you don't need to suffer. Neither you need to suffer, neither you need to create more suffering to others, even that person's. And a lot of time, when we are upset and angry with someone's behavior, and if we don't let go of that anger and upsetness, and then that will turn to the hatred. And when that hatred becomes very bad, not only we started to think our mind in a harmful way, hurtful way to that person's. Sometimes we use a bad speech, say nasty things about that person's, bad thing about that person's. And sometimes we might take certain actions trying to hurt that person. Not only that, then we started to get angry and upset anyone who is close to that person. So first we start with this person. Then this person very close to this person. Now we start to hate this person. And this person is very close to this person. And now we started to hate this person. And this person didn't do anything, all others. This person did maybe. But because they are close to them, they are good friends or families or whatever, and they have. And then we started to hate so many people. And sometimes it can get such. I mean, you probably you see, even such a way like the president, the young boy, he was being, at the very beginning, he was being, he was very young, how old, 10 something at the very beginning. And in social medias and all of it, he was being bombarded with all these negativities. Why? Because he's just the son of his. Because they hate him so much, so they started to hate anything that is related with him. And what is the problem? There was no, this is the younger son, the young one. And I know there was one time, there were some pictures of one of the signing ceremony or something, and in social media, there was so much negativities to that small boy. And that is how anger and hatred can go, In some cases, maybe you say there's some reason to get, but in that cases, that boy, nothing to get up. That boy did nothing. It's just that he was physically, biologically related. Maybe you can talk about his daughters, sons, of their behavior, their actions. That is another matter. We have different ideas and different. But that small boy had nothing. That just a child. But that was how people responded. A lot of people, and that is what happens. When we have so much hatred. Not only if we have hatred to one person, but then so many people who are related with them. And then the other families who have nothing to do with this, and maybe they might have difficulty with that person, but still because this person is very strong with that, related, and then therefore they are related with that and all of that. And so that is how damaging, negatively, anger and hatred can become. And so sometimes we don't see that. We think I'm just upset with that person's behavior, actions. But if we really check it, how that has affected me to have hatred for so many other peoples. So how many some people? And so that is, it is important us to really reflect our own mind and where does it goes, how it goes, and how it affects. And it's scary, by one person's, whatever you call it, unhealthy, harmful actions, mean actions, cruel actions, whatever that is, however you call it, due to that, when we have so much anger, then how we can have anger towards so many other beings for not much other than being related in some ways. And how that can go further and further and further if we don't take care of our mind. If we don't take care of our anger and hatred, that will not only be anger, not only that intensify and strong with one individual, but how that can keep on growing the list of the object of your anger and hatred. And that is scary. That is scary. Then when we started to have anger and hatred towards, 1 million, 2 million, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million of peoples. So therefore, so important, and that is one of the things, my job, and that is, I try to think myself that way, and that is one thing, my job is always, I'm not taking on side this and this side. I agree with certain things, I don't disagree with certain things, in terms of politics, in terms of view, in terms of everything's, I kind of personally kind of believe in certain systems, certain things. I've tried to follow that. I have inclination that, but at the same time, I don't have to take side and get upset and angry with others. There's no reason to do that. And that has been, I was, even in, I plan, even in my parents' situation, even their relationship, I'm not concerned about who's right and wrong. My only concern is how can I help them to not have bad feelings with each other, let go, my job is not to find out who is right and wrong, that is not my job. If I try to do that job, I'm going to make decision what is wrong or wrong, not based on based on what I think, based on what my view. what is wrong and wrong, right and wrong, you know. And so therefore, my job is how can, you know, and that has been always, and I know that is, from ordinary point of view, it might look quite bad, you know, that, for example, you know, let's say, whether it's my friends or families or person whom I do not know, you know, whatever. If someone's kind of did something bad, you know, unkind something, and not truth and something, and even though I can see that what they did is wrong, and according to my belief, you know, I can only say according to my belief, even that could change from today to tomorrow, next week to next month, next year, of what is right and wrong and what is good and bad. Even my perceptions could change and my view could change, which I have seen changing in my life. Things that I thought was harmful at one time, find it's not harmful anymore. My view has changed. Something which I thought it was not harmful, now I have changed to something it was not you know. So that is, and so one thing is hard to. We cannot be so rigid about that things, because it's all my view, or right, wrong, humble, all is based on a lot of what I learned, a lot of information that I get, a lot of environment, that all of that, and due to all of that, we that is why we keep on changing, you know. And so that one is that not to be so fixed. That is the word I'm trying to say, not to be so fixed. But even when we believe this is the right, this is correct, this is helpful, still having the flexibility that I could be wrong. Do you get it? When you become so rigid, I can't be wrong, this is truth, it can't be wrong, you know, that is when we become very rigid. But while I believe this is the right thing to do, or this is the right way to do, and all of that, but at the same time having the flexibility, maybe this is not a right way, that is possible, it is not the right way, it is possible that is not, this is wrong, this could be not the best way, and all of that. I think when you become rigid, that has become a big problem, you know, and we tend to become very rigid in almost everything. And so that was what I said, you know, when I give advice and that, you know, and also I apply, you know, especially as a spiritual, you know, the responsibilities of that is how to help their mind to be more calm, peaceful, how to help their negative feelings, thoughts to let it go, how to help them to have more patience, more compassion. That is my job. If I started taking side, then I'm doing just a normal, ordinary way, you know. Oh yeah, he or she did very bad to you. You should be upset. You have right to be upset. If I say that, that person feels I'm supporting them, you know. But is it healthy? Especially from a spiritual point of view. Is it healthy? It's not healthy. I can see that that is something's been wrong being done, but me kind of saying, oh, that was totally wrong, and what he or she did is totally bad, and he or she did insulted you and that person feel very supported by me by saying that, but it only increased their negativities. It only increased their anger. It only increased their hatred and all of that. Then I'm not doing my job. I'm just behaving like just ordinary. Just reinforce your anger, reinforce your delusions. You know, and so that is, yeah, and I think that is the one thing that we all have to kind of keep in our mind, and work on that. You know, personally, that is, you know, politically, you know, definitely, you know, my inclinations is more liberal, you know, democratic, but at the same time, I try to have not to have any bad feeling towards people who are on other side of their views and their ideas. You know, we just have different views. We just have different ideas, and I don't have to be so upset and angry with that. You know, and neither I try to enforce that. Just as I've said, I don't try because you are liberal, and therefore I will not try to how bad they are and their policy or how bad that person is in order to make you feel good. My job will feel you bad. You know, saying if you have that bad feeling towards it, it's wrong and you should let it go. So it is not making you feel good because I'm not supporting your view because you have bad feeling about that, and I'm not saying that is good. You know, but that is, and I think, you know, if you see all the Buddha's teaching, that is what it is all about. You know, it's not to reinforce our ignorance. It's not to reinforce our egoistic mind. It's not to reinforce our anger. It's not to reinforce all those negative. We already have those negative feelings, and there doesn't. We don't need more to reinforce that. There's too many conditions, circumstances to reinforce that, and what we need is something to kind of diffuse those negative feelings.